When Clara Hart walked through the front doors in a plain white shirt and simple beige pants, her head held high, but her heart pounding. The hush in the lobby broke, if only for a moment. Light streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling glass panels, making the marble floor gleam. Gilded elevator doors and expensive furniture gave off an icy vibe more than wealth. In this world, appearances were everything. And among all the flashy logos and tailored suits, Clara looked far too ordinary. At this holding company founded by the bank's top executives, getting hired wasn't just about skill, it was about style, too. That's why Clara's white linen shirt, her worn leather bag, and modest presence immediately drew mocking stares. The young woman at reception nodded politely, a faint smile on her lips, and said, "Applicants can head down the hall over there." Her words sounded friendly, but her tone made it clear Clara was a stranger here. Clara tightened her grip on her bag strap and kept walking. She slipped quietly into the line of candidates in the corridor. Surrounded by black suits, polished shoes, and luxury watches, she felt like she was disappearing. One of the men, Leon, straightened his suit jacket, leaned toward his companion, and whispered, "Looks like they let the janitor in," barely hiding his laughter. A woman next to him, Sophie, swung her Louis Vuitton bag at Clara and sneered. Maybe she'd like a designer bag of her own. Laughter rippled through the group. Clara's cheeks warmed, but she didn't turn away. She never wavered. Every mocking glance only fueled her silent determination. Clara wasn't here just for a job. She was here to see how this system really worked. In the waiting room, as candidates were called in one by one, they finally announced Clara's name. The room was all glass walls, modern, but cold. Inside sat three people: Marcus, head of HR, Vanessa, VP of Operations, and Philip, director of finance. Each wore a pristine suit and smiled with their teeth, never their eyes. Clara stepped in. Marcus leaned back in his chair and gave her a once-over. "Coffee's ready, by the way," he said with a chuckle. Vanessa pointed at her outfit. "This is a formal institution. You know appearance matters." Philip didn't even open her file. "It takes guts to apply for a serious position dressed like that," he said condescendingly. A bead of sweat formed on Clara's brow, but her voice stayed calm and clear. "We can talk after you review my resume," she said. Her words were stronger and more confident than they probably expected. The room went silent. Then Marcus laughed softly, picked up her file, and without opening it, slid it to the edge of the table. "No need. You're not right for this place," he said with a sneer. And right then, the quiet storm inside Clara was just beginning to swell. Clara held back the anger rising inside her as she watched Marcus toss her file aside. Not a flicker of discomfort crossed her face, only her eyes, fixed and eerily calm, reminded you of the silence before a storm. Philip tapped the edge of the desk and asked with mocking politeness, "How would you describe yourself in 5 words?" Clara almost smiled to herself. These people had no idea who they were really dealing with. She noticed out of the corner of her eye that her resume was still unopened. "You want me to introduce myself before you even learn who I am?" she replied. Her voice as sharp as a blade, yet as light as a feather. Marcus chuckled. "Resumes don't tell the whole story. You understand a person by looking at them," he said, stretching his legs under the table. Vanessa leaned forward, eyes drifting over Clara's outfit. "And sometimes clothes speak louder than words," she added, her smile fake. They were testing her patience, but Clara stayed composed. She couldn't lose sight of her goal today, to expose how this system worships appearances over merit. Instead of answering, she quietly took a small notebook and fountain pen from her bag. The trio burst out laughing, treating the gesture like a joke. "Planning to write us a poem?" Marcus sneered, sharing a look and a laugh with Philip. Without looking up, Clara said simply, "I'm just taking notes." Even now, every condescending word and dismissive glance would become evidence for her. Then came the first test. Vanessa opened 2 files in front of her. One a sleek market analysis full of colorful graphics, the other a deliberately flawed, data-incomplete financial mess. She slid the second file toward Clara and winked. "Let's see top strategists shine under pressure," she said sweetly, but with a bitter edge. Clara flipped it open and scanned it quickly. There were countless intentional errors, conflicting figures, missing tables, misleading summaries. This wasn't a test, it was a trap designed to trip her up. Under their ticking clock, Marcus continued his loud teasing. I'm sure you're great at making shopping lists. Financial strategy? Well, that takes a bit more, he joked. The room filled with stifled laughter. Not a muscle in Clara's face moved. She twirled her pen, jotted down a few notes, then closed the file and placed it back in front of them. Done, she said matter-of-factly. Marcus glanced down, flipped a page, and burst into a mocking laugh. That it? 3 pages. Vanessa took the file, shook her head. Perhaps there's such a thing as being too modest, she said. Philip turned to Clara, contempt glinting in his eyes. Thanks for wasting our time, he said. Clara stood up quietly, straightened her shoulders, and slung her bag over her shoulder. I'm not the one who wasted time, she replied, her voice neither harsh nor hurt, just unwavering certainty. At that moment, the door opened. The other candidates decked out in expensive suits and brand-name bags. Their air of superiority intact pulled out their phones to record her exit. One muttered, "Good thing we're getting this on video, a total fiasco." Clara paused for a heartbeat as she walked by. Then she turned and looked Marcus, Vanessa, and Philip squarely in the eyes, her gaze sending a clear message. The storm was only just beginning. As Clara strode out of the waiting room, the laughter behind her stabbed at her back like a dagger. She didn't look back. She held her head high and didn't hurry her steps. The quiet fire growing inside her only blazed hotter with every contemptuous word. When she was directed down a narrow corridor, a second group awaited her. This was where top candidates were interviewed. A security guard in a black suit looked down at her and asked, "Delivery for someone?" His voice tried to sound polite, but the sneer was obvious. Clara only nodded slightly and walked past. The same scene played out here. Designer shoes, diamond earrings, gold watches. And squeezed between them all, a plain-faced woman in a white linen shirt. From inside the conference room came peals of laughter. A moment later, the door opened and Marcus, Vanessa, and Philip called in the next candidate, Leon. As he passed Clara, he gave a smug grin and whispered mockingly, "Your place is in the kitchen, not the boardroom." The doors closed on Clara's face and laughter poured out again. At that moment, another employee, a young blonde woman named Emma, snuck a photo of Clara with her phone. Within minutes, that photo was circulating in a group chat of junior staff under the title, "Today's Tragedy." The comments were brutal. Poverty in turn. If she gets hired, I quit. Did she not look in the mirror before leaving home? Clara endured these petty insults in silence. She walked toward the elevator doors. A simple push of a button, a quiet wait. Candidates passed by, peeking at Clara's photo on their phones and snickering. One pointed at a small stain on her collar and whispered, maybe she should invest in herself first. Finally, the elevator doors opened and Clara stepped inside. Her fingers trembled slightly on her bag handle, but her face remained an unreadable mask. Just before the doors closed, Marcus's voice rang out from the hallway. It'd be a miracle if she ever stepped foot back in this company. At that moment, Clara tilted her head slightly and shot one last glance over her shoulder as the doors slid shut. Something inside her cracked for the first time. She wasn't here just to observe the system anymore. She was here to fight it. As the elevator rose slowly to the upper floors, Clara pulled a small device from her bag, a tablet connected to the company network, a special authority tool with a tiny emblem that gleamed, board-certified access. Because no one in that building yet knew who Clara Hart really was. And they were about to find out. At the same moment, another alarm was sounding inside. The CEO had unexpectedly canceled his meeting and was en route to the building. Fate was aligning with Clara's silent plan and nobody saw it coming. When the elevator doors opened and Clara stepped out in front of the executive meeting rooms, something had already shifted inside. The news that the CEO was on his way had sent a wave of unease through the managers. Marcus, Vanessa, and Philip, normally lounging there with barely concealed arrogance, now exchanged quick, worried glances. Leon and the other candidates fell silent, ears straining toward the hallway. Clara appeared in the corridor as quietly as a shadow, her simple bag slung over one shoulder, her face still unreadably calm. Marcus spotted her and let out a mocking laugh. "You're still here?" he called out. The other candidates snickered behind him. Vanessa put her hands on her hips and sneered. "Guess somebody forgot to check on the help." Clara said nothing. She took slow, deliberate steps toward the meeting room door. At that moment, a young staff member, Emma, reached out from the doorway to snap another photo of Clara. But this time Clara stopped in her tracks and fixed her gaze on Emma. Just one look, there was no anger in it, no fear. Only a quiet, knowing warning. Then, with a soft ding, the far elevator doors opened, and the atmosphere in the building changed in an instant. In walked a gray-haired man with stern features, wearing a dark navy suit, CEO Gabriel Stein. At his side was a younger man, his assistant, Lucas. Gabriel's expression was so serious it instantly straightened everyone's posture. Marcus jumped to his feet, Vanessa smoothed her hair, and Philip swallowed hard. Without glancing at anyone else, Gabriel strode directly to Clara. The murmurs in the corridor fell silent. His voice carried the weight of a ceremony. "Madam Chair, please forgive the delay." The hallway froze. Marcus, Vanessa, Philip, Leon, Emma, every candidate, they all felt as if they'd been caught at the very eye of a storm. The sneers on their faces vanished, replaced by stunned disbelief. Clara gave a slight nod, shrugged off her bag, and pulled a small pin from her pocket. It read, "Chair, Board of Audit and Ethics Clara Hart." Vanessa went ashen. Marcus's mouth hung open without a sound. Philip broke into a cold sweat. Leon took a step back and Emma dropped her phone. Clara turned her eyes slowly, surveying everyone in the room. Each look was like a bullet. Every mocking word and laugh they'd thrown at her now weighed heavily against them. Without emotion, Gabriel said, "Let's proceed to the meeting room." And Clara led the way, standing in the center of the room. Her voice was steady but devastating. "Today, I wasn't just a candidate. I was testing your company's ethics, values, and respect for humanity. And the results are shameful." A hush fell. And for Marcus, Vanessa, and Philip, those were the longest seconds of their lives. Because the storm had finally begun. The air in the boardroom was heavy. Every breath felt labored under the weight of Clara's revelations. Marcus's palms were sweaty at the table. Vanessa's lips trembled. Philip kept averting his gaze. The other candidates, Leon, Emma, and the rest stood at the edges, watching Clara's every move as though waiting for a death sentence. Clara approached the table in measured steps and produced her tablet. When she flipped it open, the projected images froze everyone's blood. Screenshots of internal chats, mocking messages, bribery negotiations, and covert deals. One document in particular shattered the silence. Leon's bank transfer record showing a job guarantee in return for a concealed donation to a manager. Clara's voice rang out like a seismic echo. What determines this company's future isn't talent or work ethic. It's bootlicking, showmanship, and money. We've documented it all today. Marcus leapt to his feet, desperate. "This is a misunderstanding. We merely dash." Clara cut him off with a steely glare. His protest died in a strangled whimper. Vanessa tried to interject. We followed standards. Evaluating based on appearance dash, Clara held up another file. Proof that Vanessa promised a favorable interview in exchange for a luxury watch. Philip bowed his head, fingers trembling as they tapped the table. His WhatsApp messages scrolled across the screen. "Talent doesn't matter. We sell brands." In the corner, Gabriel Stein observed in silence. Yet his eyes shone with unwavering support for Clara's stand. Lucas quietly recorded all the data and relayed instructions to security. Clara closed her tablet. Then, one by one, she fixed her gaze on Marcus, Vanessa, and Philip. Her voice was sharp and unwavering. "As of today, there is no place in this company for incompetence, discrimination, or corruption." Gabriel stepped forward, sealing their fate with a single, authoritative announcement. "Marcus Reed, Vanessa Braun, Philip Langley, your employment is terminated effective immediately. You are under internal investigation and legal action is underway." The candidates waiting outside recoiled as the news reached the corridor. Those who had mocked and belittled Clara now stared with fear in their eyes. But Clara bore no triumphal airs. She held her head high, her expression resolute. Today was not about personal vengeance, it was about justice. Gabriel nodded to Lucas, who produced a small device. In an instant, every screen on the corporate network displayed a unified message. A new era begins. Merit above all. Security opened the doors. Under every gaze, Marcus, Vanessa, and Philip were escorted out, once proud, now humbled and terrified. Clara took one last look out of the conference room window. A quiet fire burned in her eyes. This was only the beginning. When the heavy doors of the meeting room closed, the atmosphere inside transformed completely. Those who once thought themselves untouchable now stood silently before Clara, heads bowed. On the wall screen, the company's new principles shone clearly. Success would no longer be measured by showmanship, but by real talent. From now on, only the truly deserving would advance. Clara, as always unadorned and composed, pulled out from her bag the documents for the brand new hiring system. She had personally designed every detail of this overhaul that would change the company's operations from top to bottom. No more names, no more diplomas, no more expensive suits. Now the only criterion was genuine skill. After Gabriel signed the papers, he broke the silence with the first words in the room. "Today, we're not just changing a system," he said. "We're giving voice to justice." Whispers that began in the corridors soon spread throughout the entire building. Those who once wielded power fell from grace in Clara's presence, and a new era was dawning for the talents long ignored. That day, the mountain of documents uploaded into the company's internal systems was more than a protocol update. It was the final cry of an arrogance-fueled order. Clara didn't shout victory. Her fight was quiet, but its impact could shake these glass walls. Before long, social media buzzed with Clara Hart's name, but she didn't celebrate. In her small office, she set her old bag aside and began planning how to build the new hiring team. For Clara, true victory was not applause, but the firm steps taken toward the future. Outside, everyone was talking about her story. A plain shirt that refused to be crushed by designer suits. A silent but unbreakable determination. Without raising her voice, she had upended the entire system with the one she created. And that evening, as the building's lights went dark, everyone knew one thing. Strength isn't about wearing the priciest watch or flashing the shiniest diploma. True power is having the courage, like Clara, to change the world in silence. Clara Hart was no longer just an executive. She had become the name of a revolution. If Clara's quiet resistance inspired you, if you felt that justice can be hidden in a bag, a shirt, a stance, stick with us on this journey. Don't forget to like our story, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so we can meet again in the next Tales of Justice. Because sometimes the biggest revolutions start with the quietest steps. And maybe one day, those steps will come from you.